morning and welcome to today's webinar, Magic XPI Integration Platform for SharePoint and Enterprise Apps. My name is Glenn Johnson. I'm a Senior Vice President here at Magic Software Enterprises Americas, and I'm joined today by Ryan Beck, Senior Consultant at Magic Software Americas. Welcome, Ryan.
Good morning, Glenn.
And good morning to all of you. We thank you for joining us and are really looking forward to today's session. I hope that it will be useful and informative. If at any time you have questions for either speaker today, you may type those into the question box or the chat box, and we will check those as we conclude our formal presentation and hope that we might be able to provide you with additional information that you're looking for. Today's session is being recorded and will be available on our website within a few days, and so we certainly invite you to access those recordings as well by going to magicsoftware.com and looking in the News and Events section under the Webinars archive. Let's go ahead and get started. Magic XPI Integration Platform for SharePoint and Enterprise Apps is a topic that we're very delighted to be talking about. We have a close working relationship with Microsoft as a really charter member of the Business Critical SharePoint program that has been organized by Microsoft to help deliver high-level integration capabilities for their enterprise customers that are utilizing SharePoint and looking for ways to integrate that to back-end systems. And because of Magic Software's expertise in that regard, we've been very involved in that program. In fact, just a week ago, we were in Denver, Colorado with Microsoft and a few other Microsoft partners participating in a very large Oracle user conference called Collaborate, which brings together users of Oracle E-Business Suite, J.D. Edwards, Oracle Databases, PeopleSoft, Primavera, and so on. And so we're very impressed with the kind of response that we're getting, and that's why we're offering today's webinar for those of you who wanted to take a deeper dive and look into the solution. Magic Software is a company that has been in business for some 30 years, empowering customers around the globe with smarter technology that's delivering a multi-channel user experience for enterprise business processes, business logic, and data. So at a high level, this is what Magic Software does. When we see that played out as a global provider of application and development and business integration platforms, we often are cited for our experience working with real customers, thousands across the globe, very innovative technology, and technology that allows you as an IT organization and as a business to focus on your business needs rather than reinventing the wheel through excessive and detailed programming activities. And so just a word about Magic. Magic is established in 1983. We're traded on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol MGIC. We have offices worldwide with customers in over 50 countries, some 1,000 employees, about 2,500 business partners, and thousands of customers and millions of end users for these solutions, and we'll mention some of those today. Magic Software is a Gartner and Forrester ranked visionary and top performer for application and integration platform solutions. We have a customer success focus by delivering top-notch training on our technology and related solutions through our Magic University program. We have a 24/7 technical support staff based around the world in the U.S., in Israel, and India, and elsewhere, Japan, and elsewhere. And these support teams are providing both online support as well as phone support. And then added to that is our global services team, which works very closely with our business partners in delivering the kinds of hands-on help that many of our customers need in order to get jump-started on projects, get the first implementations and successes and early wins. And we're frequently sitting side by side with customers and really doing the knowledge transfer on the technology platforms that Magic Software offers. We're extremely solid, stable financials. All this is available online, and it's a really great story, so we encourage you to look at that. There's some $126 million in revenue in 2012 with $18.3 million non-GAAP operating income, 16.2 based on GAAP. Cash flow from operations, some $18 million, and a very solid balance sheet with $38 million in net cash. So the company is doing very well, very solid, stable, in business a long time. And we emphasize that because with many of those who compete with us, there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the marketplace, and we have benefited from the stability that we've been able to bring to our customers. That stability is reflected in year after year growth in both operating income and net income since 2007, and that's also very exciting to us to see that very clear trend line despite what's gone on in the economy in those years. As a visionary top performer, Magic Software has been recognized in a number of ways. In the SD Times 100 award for middleware, we're ranked in the Software 500, we're a 3-time SAP award winner, Salesforce.com integration award winners, and we're in alliance with a number of major vendors, with companies like Oracle, where we have validated integration, SAP, where we have certified integration with SAP applications, and NetWeaver, and of course AppExchange certification from Salesforce.com, and IBM Server Proven and ready for SOA specialties and so on. So we're actively involved with the major technology vendors in the industry with whom we work like Switzerland, where we are neutral and try to provide integration capabilities across all of these technologies and many, many more from other providers. Just before we begin right into the topic, we wanted to remind you of the Magic Software Users Conference coming up June 3rd through the 5th in Las Vegas at the Encore at Wynn. A very exciting resort destination. We have 3 days of Magic XPI education. Rooms are $149 a night. Conference rate is $595, so we certainly invite you to participate in that. Magic Software has been, as we said, very involved with Microsoft in delivering a message about business-critical SharePoint. And as a result of those activities, product managers like Jared Spataro have been quoted in the media talking about Magic's XPI solutions that will enable customers of all sizes to create SharePoint applications that access legacy business applications. And this support was, of course, taken before SharePoint 2013 was released, but we were also fully compatible with the newer versions and older versions of SharePoint. So we do that through a one-stack technology. Magic XPI and Magic XPA are an integration platform and an application platform that work together to provide integration capabilities from application to application, and then to actually deliver up and serve applications to users across a variety of different deployment methodologies or channels, such as mobile, such as web, such as client-server, and so forth. And so these technologies have in common a metadata-driven characteristic. So as metadata-driven applications, we're really leveraging the capability of the platform rather than requiring your IT department to employ developers who would have to code those sort of basic routines and things that are part of normal kind of integration middleware stack. And so by avoiding the complexity of typical middleware, you really gain tremendously as an IT organization working with one stack approach where you have all of your integration capabilities built into one consistent user interface. It's very exciting. So as we look at SharePoint, let's get right into the topic. SharePoint and enterprise apps are affected and impacted by a variety of megatrends that are things that affect all organizations at a high level and may be impacting your organization very directly. For example, 84% of organizations have remote workforces. The world is becoming mobile. We know this. The distributed workforce is causing enterprise IT departments to respond through the delivery of mobile applications, mobile capabilities, integration to back-end environments, so that you can use mobile apps that are integrated. And Magic, through its XPA application platform, is right there in the middle of that conversation. We also know that there's this trend of consumerization of IT. It's talked about a lot. It's a bit of a hype, but there's also some reality to it. 65% of companies are deploying at least one social software tool, for example. And these numbers reflect the idea that businesses simply cannot ignore social. And what's interesting is that social is now going beyond the customer-facing side of many businesses to becoming a part of the way that employees interact with one another through tools such as Yammer, such as Chatter, such as SharePoint itself, that allow for various kinds of social media interaction, workflow, and so on. Now, as some 4 million millennials enter the workforce each year, this multi-generational workforce is really demanding this kind of newer approach to the way that we interact with information, the way that we process information. And there's an expectation level for IT today that simply wasn't there 10 years ago in terms of the way that people should interact, because we're used to not only the internet, but social media applications and mobile applications, which are really changing expectations for what's possible. And so this trend of consumerization is working in tandem with the mega trend of a younger workforce, and we're seeing demand for change, for different ways of doing things. Nevertheless, IT departments are based in reality, and that reality is that 70% of IT budgets are spent maintaining what can be described as inflexible and siloed data center solutions. Unfortunately, that means that the infrastructure cost and complexity that these organizations face is making it difficult to respond to these mega trends. And one of the trends that is making it a little easier is the rise of the cloud. Because through the rise of the cloud, we now know that 80% of large enterprise IT managers are at least in trial stage for cloud computing initiatives. And these numbers go up and up all the time. What we're seeing is that there's now an ability for IT to respond more quickly because they can leverage cloud solutions rather than having to try to build out their own infrastructure and application portfolio in-house. They now have the ability to engage in mashups and so on. And these trends all require integration. They all require mobilization. They all require application servers and integration platforms that make this possible. And so as mid-sized and larger enterprise organizations look at these trends, they realize there's something that they need to do. So the problem is that you have siloed data, which is limiting business performance. What do we mean by that? We're talking about the fact that you have various systems, whether we're talking about SAP or PeopleSoft or JD Edwards or Oracle E-Business Suite or Microsoft Dynamics. We have various back-end systems, and not just your ERP systems, but also your CRM solutions, supply chain management, logistics systems, HR information management systems, enterprise e-commerce platforms, and on and on and on. You know what's in your portfolio. This makes sense to you. But with all of those systems there, the data can become siloed. There could be business processes which really are touching multiple points in this area. So the organizational pain points, if you look to the left, that are often faced are that business-critical data gets stuck in these siloed systems, and it frustrates users and IT. Disconnected teams are resorting to ad hoc, inefficient, and unreliable processes. And that's a lot of what the SharePoint phenomenon has been about. It's been about line of business saying, we need solutions now, IT's not moving fast enough, and so in many organizations, SharePoint has been utilized, its capabilities have been leveraged because they're so ubiquitously available, and then IT has found themselves having to catch up. Well, in many organizations now, IT is saying, wait a minute, let's control this. Let's make sure that as we build out business processes, they're properly analyzed, and that they're working correctly with back-end systems. But how do you do that? And the other problem is that decisions then were being based on inaccurate data and result in a lost competitive advantage. The majority of the organization's business users don't have direct access to important business data, either because they're not licensed users of particular systems or because the systems simply don't have the information available within them because it actually resides in a different system as part of a separate database. So a small percentage of the organization is typically licensed or can access the business data directly. People in finance and accounting can access ERP systems, but salespeople sometimes need that information and often don't have a license. So how do they know what the collection status is on their customer? How do they know what's going on? Without integration and some applications that can be made available via SharePoint, you have a challenge. So line of business experts and IT pros are needing to work together to provide a viewpoint of this information for these users. But the silos exist today, as we all know. So what's needed is to enable business-critical solutions based on SharePoint by connecting line of business applications and SharePoint together. What this does is it allows you to organize ad hoc data. Processing can take place. You have a very productivity-driven approach and based on SharePoint, which is a very familiar platform. With Magic XPI's integration platform then working in tandem, you have process integration, which is streamlining complexity, eliminating programming requirements. And you have, on the back end, very business-oriented systems that are running, specialized users, complex data, complex APIs, but those APIs can be overcome through the use of Magic XPI, bringing and revealing information to SharePoint. So the result is, first of all, you surface business data. You increase access to that business-critical data by connecting back-end systems to Microsoft SharePoint. 2007, 2010, 2013, it doesn't matter. You can improve processes, and this is critical differentiation between simple data integration and process improvement. By improving processes, you're able to implement, extend, and improve those business processes by building new solutions and capabilities based on SharePoint. This could be a mashup where you have multiple back-end systems that are transacting and processing and providing information and data, but where the user has a unified interface and experience through a SharePoint portal, for example. And the result of that is that you're delivering ROI to your users through commonly available tools in your organization, delivering a faster ROI. And we'll talk about exactly what these, some examples are of these SharePoint applications, what they do for the organization, which business processes they're applied to. That's definitely part of the discussion today. But delivering that faster return on investment means you have decreased business risk, you have a solution for your line of business users through SharePoint. So business-critical SharePoint solutions are rapidly responding to business needs by bringing information up from those back-end systems via Microsoft SharePoint to a whole host of different requirements, whether they're hiring processes, sales reporting, pricing analysis, delivery scheduling, supply chain management. You can read the list. And this just touches the surface. It really can be applied and extended to any business process within your organization. It is a ubiquitous technology, and it is a flexible technology that allows you to work with documents, to manage information, to present a portal-like interface and solution to users with actual back-end processing connections. Very powerful. So common integration use cases which are extending ERP to SharePoint are things like employee self-service, manager self-service, customer self-service. These self-service apps need to be available to a wide audience, to trading partners, to customers, to employees, to managers. And with a SharePoint application and portal, you are able to bring that solution across the entire organization so that your data isn't locked and only available to ERP users or CRM users and so on. Other areas where there's a common integration requirement are things like e-commerce, where you have the need for catalogs and pricing and actual sales portals and customer order portals. And these may be managed in SharePoint. You may have documents related to the delivery of solutions, to the support of those solutions. And SharePoint is an excellent tool for that enterprise content management, as we all know. And then there are going to be a variety of custom processes that extend capabilities to ERP users and non-ERP users. And we can talk about what some of those might be. So, the integration challenge can be to utilize SharePoint HR applications. It can be to utilize things that are outside of HR. But let's look at, that question. Is there a more efficient way to bridge that business value gap? How do you do it? How do you actually connect SharePoint and your ERP system? Because they both have APIs, but those APIs don't talk to one another. They just expose information. They receive information. You need an intermediary. And there needs to be a better way than programming and writing web services manually. And so there is a more efficient way to bridge that business value gap. It's code-free and it's efficient. And that's what we'll be showing you today. It's called the Magic XPI Integration Platform. It provides enterprise-grade integration, automates your business processes, synchronizes your data so that you can connect SharePoint and Dynamics and DMC and Salesforce and IBM and SAP, on and on and on, all throughout the Oracle portfolio, the SAP portfolio, lesser-known applications, through technology adapters and common interface protocols that have been in the industry, not just recently, but for decades. And because many of you have legacy systems, it may be necessary to be able to call an RPG application. It may be necessary to throw in a TCP listener and interact with more lower-level devices that are on the network. All of that is possible, automated so that you don't have to write code in order to do it. That's powerful. So the Magic XPI integration platform has that versatility, and yet it's comprehensive, and the result is very productive. You have an approach to interoperability that keeps you connected, that's highly scalable, and optimized for excellent performance. These are both certified and validated integration approaches, and that is important, obviously, for your business-critical SharePoint applications and the back-end systems that they're connected to. So this mobile and cloud-ready integration that's available through Magic XPI leverages existing assets with service-oriented architecture. Service-oriented architecture is simply the concept that you have reusability through services. And Magic XPI draws on many years of proven experience in delivering enterprise-grade service-oriented architecture compliant solutions with scalability built in, with error handling built in an automated fashion, fault tolerance management, operational reliability, and business continuity, and at the same time, of course, maintaining stringent security throughout. So how do we do that? We do that through a library of components. We do that through wizards. We do that through a series of resources and methods. Now, these may involve SOAP integration with WSDL and UDI and so on. They may involve RESTful web services with HTTP GET, HTTP PUT, and so on. Or they may involve completely different kinds of technologies, FTP secure, HTTP interfaces. They may involve technologies such as message-oriented middleware, where you have a message queue, MQ series, for example, JMS, for example, and you may also have Microsoft message queue. So various message queue technologies may be a part of this. Flat file interfaces, XML interfaces. The ability to work with all of these technologies becomes very important. And we do that through the Magic XPI integration platform, which provides the resources, the connectors, the adapters, the data management layer where you have connectivity to databases, the ability to use wizards to write SQL statements when that's required, and then, of course, the orchestration layer, which allows you to automate those business processes and then serve everything up as a web service, all the while encased in a very secure environment that's monitored, that allows you to see what's going on, to log what's going on, and one that can be developed easily through a studio interface that's visual, and one that provides even SDK capabilities. So it looks like this. Ryan's going to show us this in a moment. It's a visual approach that allows you to drag, drop, and configure your business processes. It has all these adapters and connectors, I think over 100 now, It's reusable, it's scalable, it's easy to use, and it allows you to do things like data mapping in an automated fashion. We'll take a look at that, I believe, and to then clearly monitor those activities. So SharePoint integration is taking place through Windows SharePoint services, business connectivity services, SharePoint 2010 are also supported, and so there's this kind of push and pull kind of approach depending upon which way the information is going, how that all takes place. But the good news for you as a business analyst in your IT organization is that you don't have to program it. It's all going to be presented to you through a user interface, and there's no line-by-line coding in order to do that. So the customers that are implementing this are companies like ABI and AutoZone and BorgWarner and Cleveland Golf, who have impressive organizations doing impressive things through a variety of interfaces and approaches. Service-oriented architecture has integrated scalability. Companies like Rapatoni that use Magic technology with over 300,000 users processing 85% of all of the real estate listings in the United States, just as an example. RoadNet Technologies is utilizing Magic XPI to integrate to back-end systems for their RoadNet solutions, which integrate, which manage some 200,000 vehicles per day. Companies like Sony and Toto and UPS and Vishay are other great examples of companies that are integrating to back-end systems utilizing Magic technology in a variety of ways. What I want to do at this point is actually share the leadership of this webinar now at this point with Ryan Beck. And Ryan Beck is going to share his desktop with us as soon as I make that possible, which I think it is now.
Great.
And then what Ryan would like to do is, I think, show us really the nuts and bolts of integration and how that all works. So I'm going to pass it to you now, Ryan, and please type in your questions at any time as we go along, and we'll get to those right at the end of the demonstration.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. Well, what I'm going to show you today is something a little different than what we typically do. I'm going to show you actually how easy it is to do what we've been talking about. We want to be able to hook SharePoint into other things. As a platform, SharePoint is great, but if it doesn't have actual data that looks like everything else in your organization, who's going to use it? Otherwise, it's just it's a dead end. So we're going to be able to show how we can integrate data with other back-end systems that SharePoint would not be able to reach on itself, or that you wouldn't want to. For instance, if we wanted to pull data out of your ERP system, technically you could probably find a way to get SharePoint to do direct SQL statements against your ERP and be able to pull arbitrary data. But you would never want to do that because, one, it's a manual kludgy integration that would obviously break if anything changed. But the other thing is that that obviously creates a security issue. Obviously more people can get into SharePoint than your ERP, and you wouldn't want them to be able to find a way to get arbitrary data out of there, because while they may have access to certain tables, you wouldn't want them to be able to try and get into anything else, right? So we're going to show you how we can actually do that in a much better way. Now, Magic XPI has a SharePoint adapter, which allows us to go ahead and read and write data out of SharePoint. So we're actually not going to use that much at the moment. This would be if you wanted to be able to get data out of SharePoint, and if you wanted to be able to load data into SharePoint. It's really great at that. For instance, if I drag the SharePoint component over onto my flow and go in, I can see all the different lists and libraries on my SharePoint server. And I can say, hey, I'm going to upload everything into this database here, or add. And it would be stored in SharePoint in the actual document library, which we will do. We do in other webinars, and I think we'll do it later today. You can check out our webinar in the next hour. We'll be doing that. But now, what if we wanted to not have the data reside in SharePoint? What if the data is too large for it, too secure, for whatever reason you just don't want to be able to park the data in SharePoint? You want to bring it in on demand. Maybe it's maybe you're doing some sort of dashboard on data that changes all the time, or maybe maybe it's just there's just thousands and millions of lines, and you don't want to copy it all over SharePoint because it's just not designed for that. So what we're going to do is show you how you can bring information in from your enterprise system on demand and have it displayed in SharePoint when a user needs it. So what I'm going to do is here I am, and I'll show you what it would kind of look like in the end first, and then we'll go ahead and show you how you can do it. So here's an example SharePoint site. It's where someone might come in and enter their time that they've worked on a project or something like that. They could be doing this from, say, a mobile device or from not even in the office, and then it would eventually get into SharePoint here. And if I wanted to have a lookup field on this based on data that was in ERP, I need to have an outside data source. So instead of me just me coming in and typing in some of these things manually, right, I could go ahead and click this black button, and it's going to jump to a custom SharePoint page that we wrote that pulls data out of an ERP system. And you can sort data based on certain parameters, and you can group it, or you can hit the next page to go through the pagination to do it. And behind the scenes, this data it's pulling is not in SharePoint. This data is in an ERP system, which I'll show you in a minute. When I click the Use button on the one I want, it'll go ahead and pre-populate the fields and relate it to that, say, that work order in the situation. So how did we do this? How did we make that happen? Well, it goes behind the scenes in what's called a data source in SharePoint. SharePoint can go and get data sources from many different places. And I'm going to go ahead and go actually minimize this and show you the types it supports, and then we're going to make one, and we're going to plug it into SharePoint. So I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to open up from my desktop the SharePoint Designer. SharePoint Designer will allow you to open your site. So for instance, if you go to open, instead of just opening something, you can do, say, open a site, and you can paste in the URL of your SharePoint. So I've got, for instance, the root here, which I can open, or I can open the sites/demos. And it will show you actually all of your existing lists here on the SharePoint site. Here's actually the one that we just did. It's under time cards. For instance, under the new form, you can see we edited it, and we added, simply we just added a button that hyperlinks over to the other page. The button's not too powerful, but over on the other page, which is the lookup.aspx, you can see we did something cool. And we actually have it pulling a data source. And if I go into the code, although this looks like static text, if I go into the code, you will see that this is actually pulling from what's called a web part and doing it. So this is all very, very ugly. So I'm going to show you the easy way to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to Magic XPI, and we're going to provide a data service to SharePoint. To do that, there's a couple ways to go about it. As you'll see in SharePoint, actually, one more second if I go back here, we do support all the different types and things that it can do. Obviously, SharePoint can do database connections, but to do something a little more fun, we've got XML files, which could be based over a URL. So that could be a REST-based web service. Or we can actually use an actual real XML web service, which would be full SOAP. So we'll do that this time because that's a little more interesting and a little bit harder to do, but we'll see how easy Magic XPI makes it. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to create a web service that SharePoint can read. I'm going to do that by figuring out what I want to show. Let's just say we want to show all of our customers in our ERP. So in our ERP, we've got I just made a simple I pulled everything from a table here, and said I want to pull like names and customer numbers and things like that, and maybe I don't know, maybe some information about them, like who made them, or there's obviously some more metadata in here. But let's just go ahead and grab a couple of fields off this. So I'm going to go ahead and go and first create a web service in XPI that will do that. So let's just serve up the customer name and customer number, and maybe the maybe the tax number. And so what we'll do is come into here and go into our services repository in Magic XPI. We'll make a new web service. And there's already a couple here, but we'll make a new one. And we'll call this customers appropriately. And in here you can pick a lot of different things, whether what you want the style of it. We'll just do a document literal, I suppose. It should be easy enough. It's a more common, more modern way of doing it. And we'll go into our operations and pick the operation. I guess I should give it a name. Let's call it for SharePoint. And we'll go into our operations. And I'm going to make a new operation called all, because it'll just show me all the customers. Although you can actually pass stuff in. And what we're actually going to show is a list of all the different customers that there could be. So maybe we want to show, let's say, let's see here. We'll show the customer name, and there'll be a string, and we got the customer number, and that'll be, probably a numeric, and then also maybe like their tax ID. And we'll make that an alpha. Okay, so we just define our parameters on what's going to be available. So I'll say OK, and I'll say OK. And we actually need to publish that web service. And when we do, we'll find out what the we'll actually find out what the URL WSDL of it's going to be. And that was successful. So I can actually copy this URL probably, and go ahead and use it. And it's actually, I don't know if you saw it, but it was actually going to be real simple. Customers for SharePoint. And there it is. So this is a WSDL file. Obviously, it's got a lot of stuff in it. We don't need to know too much about it. That could be used by SharePoint very easily. So just to show you real quick, I'm going to step back and plug this into SharePoint and show you how quickly it can consume that. Pick my operation, and we can now see it as an operation. And then obviously you can pass certain parameters in, like maybe you want to pass one customer number that you want to see. It was actually very easily able to read that. So we'll go ahead and step back and show how we can send data to it. In here in Magic XPI, when SharePoint calls, we have what's called a flow. And a flow can be made up of lots of different components over here on the right that would do, say, go talk to an ERP system, or go talk to Salesforce, or even talk to, of course, SharePoint. But what we want to do is we'll make a very, very simple flow. We're just going to go ahead and put our web service component at the top. And that's going to be a trigger. It's going to basically allow something to call this flow. It's going to be out there listening for that web service endpoint. And we'll just go ahead and give it a little bit of configuration. And have it go like that. And then what we'll do is we'll actually go ahead and we'll actually go back, and one thing I needed to change is make sure that all those parameters I made were going outbound. They're actually coming in. So you have options in your in here on whether or not you want these values to come in from SharePoint, or we want them to go out, or do both. I actually want them to go out so that we can actually send them back out. However, some of them may be only in parameters. So you may want SharePoint to say ask for a specific customer number, in which case you can leave it as an in, and then I'll just regenerate it. And there we go. So now what we can do is we can actually provide an XML file back to that web service simply by grabbing a data mapper, going in here and finding the schema that was generated from that web service, which is should be pretty straightforward. I think it was underneath this one. Here we go. Customers for SharePoint. And then what we'll do is we'll just go ahead, and I think we're actually only passing, passing a couple of them here. There we go. This is a different one. There we go. This is the one that we remembered. So you can pass through your different parameters in now. So for instance, maybe if someone SharePoint passes in a customer number, then we can go ahead and return like the name of the customer based on that, right? Or whatever we want to do. And then what will happen is we can basically just do a query using the data mapper to get that information out of the database. So all I need to do is go in here and say I want to work with a database. It'll actually go out and read the schema of the database for me, or I can just put my own statement in. And what will happen in the end is I will have, say, a data mapping that goes between the source and the destination. So it went out and read my ERP system to look at all the different fields here. These are all the same ones we saw earlier. So I can map my customer name and customer code and things like that out into whatever variables I want. And then what will happen is whenever this web service gets called with, say, basically your web service call, we can pull data out of here. And we could parameterize this to say, hey, we only want to pull one customer at a time, or maybe we want all of them, depending on how you set this up. So going back then over to the SharePoint Designer side, I can go ahead and look at this web service again. And it's actually, I closed it, so, oh no, actually here it is. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect to it. And we should be able to get to show the parameters here in just a second. I have to remember why it's not doing that. But here's the whistle again. You can see the parameters actually are available. So we'll just have to get SharePoint to refresh this. If I delete, maybe just remove it and make it again. And there we go. And then obviously we'll want to show some data. So we don't have any data to show yet. If I go into, say, like an existing one, you can actually go ahead and say show data. It'll pop up, query it, and show you what you expect to get back. So we'll go one more step to get that to happen, and basically show you, for instance, what can happen in a REST web service. Here it'll basically just return an XML file, and then if we're going with a web service, the show data will actually go out and hit the web service and use it. So what will happen then is when you get, basically the end game is when you get all of this set up, and it's actually not that hard to do, you actually already can see it's calling, when I do this, it's actually trying to call Magic XPI right now. It will then return a response and populate the data all the way back. So there's a little bit extra work to do to get the passing the parameter by creating a page, which you can do by simply going and saying, maybe I'll just make a copy of this page, right? Which is right here. You say open with, and then go right into it. And then what we can do is basically use this to give a user interface in the end. So when someone opens it up, it'll pull data all the way back from the ERP system through. So Magic XPI would be sitting in the middle to be able to do that. And that's the idea. Then in the end, if you wanted to be able to push data back to SharePoint to store it there, we actually have a pretty cool way of doing it. So let's say we want to do that as well. So we could just make another flow. Grab the SharePoint component and drag it over and say OK. Now we're using our same query. Maybe we wanted to push all the customers over, right? So we would be doing, pick what list we want to work with. It's going to browse our server. Now remember, every SharePoint server is unique. You're going to have your custom lists and whatnot. So what this gives us the ability to do is go out and see any list that you've created, and then when I go into them, for instance, like I'll go into contacts, it'll actually show me all the different parameters that I can use in it. So it'll see the fields like the name, the company, the title, whatnot. And on the opposite side, I can actually go ahead and provide, say, any data source I want. Data sources that we can send to SharePoint or anything. It can be a database, it can be a flat file, like if you're dealing with EDI or something like that. XML files would come from any other component, as well as all your other types of things. For a database, it's really simple. I can actually just use my my query here that I've got. Now, you can actually browse a database automatically with a wizard. So, for instance, if I go into the wizard and click this, what it'll actually do, it'll take a second because it's got to connect to a server with a lot of tables. It'll show me everything in the database that's actually available. So this is actually kind of big because there's all this stuff in here. But if I go, I can just search for the one I want. It'll give me customers or business partners. Say next. And then what I can do is pick only the fields I want. So maybe I want this one, and we said tax ID, alternate key, things like that. So just pick all the fields I want, go in, and say next. And this allows me then to map all the information over without having to know SQL. I can just literally map the information across just like this, by basically giving you a very simple way of doing it. Now, this data mapper defines the relationship as it comes across. What I'm doing here is, as this runs on the server, the information is going to be selected from the left side, and it'll be sent to the right side. So as it goes across, it'll undergo a transformation. I can steer the different nodes into there in a way that they'll show up as I want them. So it's going to basically go through a transformation or a modification here, and only do basically only bring the fields I want and bring them across in that way. Now this will bring a straight mapping. If I want to do something a little bit more, say, different, like maybe I wanted to concatenate a couple fields together, I can do that. So if I were to bring a couple of these fields together, I could do a simple concatenation by going in here and saying that this is going to be concatenate this field and this field. And what will happen is, as it comes across, you'll see this little FX here that tells me that there's going to be a modification that goes in there. There's actually a lot more you can do besides simple text strings. We have a long list of arithmetic, string manipulation, and comparisons that you can do that would allow you then to say, go in and say if this string is this or if it's that. There's basically hundreds of different things you can do to modify this. So while the whole environment is code-free, we still have the ability to go in and do all kinds of different manipulations to say any of the data as it comes across. So you're not limited based on the fact that it is code-free. Now the idea here is, once you've created your project in this visual environment, using all the wizards and different adapters, we can deploy it down to a server just by hitting a single button. You hit this little blue build button here. It will check the project, see if it's syntactically valid, deploy it to the server, and then run it as a Windows service transparently all the time. So the idea here is, once you've done this, you don't need the studio anymore. It goes away. This just runs as a Windows service, and will basically act as an entry point for your SharePoint to get into any data that it needs. This creates a much more secure relationship between your SharePoint and your ERP system or whatever other enterprise system you have in the background, so that it's going through as a gateway. So if we wanted to make sure that only certain people in SharePoint could access certain fields or certain objects or do certain queries, you can certainly do that, because all the information can be passed in from SharePoint, and we can keep that security context in mind. Who is it? What do they want? Are they really allowed to do that? As opposed to just giving them access to the database and having them design their SharePoint forms to pull whatever fields they want or update fields, and basically filter all of that and do it in a way that you've defined. So it's a much better way. Going through the list of components that we have, I know we talked a bit about only the SharePoint one. We didn't really have too much time to dive too deep, but there's a lot of other ones in here that could be used in your integration. So for instance, if you wanted to get back into an SAP system, we have components for SAP, both their big R3 system and say like something smaller like B1, but also SAP A1 as well. JDE is of course out there. We'll be doing a JDE demo in the next hour, I believe. And then we have more technologies, generic adapters like working with email, FTP, HTTP, flat files, working with obviously saved files, and of course XML and web services. So all of these components can be used to create really complex integrations in a very simple way. The components themselves sort of give me basically bring all of the data to the table. So for instance, like the SharePoint one was able to go out there and understand a SharePoint server. Our JD adapter could do that. Our Salesforce adapter could do that. Our other adapters are basically designed to go out and understand the system that they're connected to, and bring it all together and basically become the center of your integration. All your systems out there have integration points. So if you have, say, you have web services in SharePoint, and you have your say business functions in JDE, or you have your web services in Salesforce, you're like, well, why do I need an integration tool if I have all these things out there that kind of do that? The reason is because most of those are sort of latches that can be together. They don't necessarily talk to each other. It's sort of like when you're doing plumbing, you've got male pipes and female pipes, and they have to go together in a certain way. In a way, all those web services out there are latches that can be hooked into, but you need the tool that can actually be the hook that can drive them, something to initiate the process, something to translate the data. That's what Magic XPI does. It sits together in the middle, and it's the universal adapter that can make all the pipelines talk to each other and be able to hook them together in a way that is native to all of them. So Glenn, do we have any questions?
Yes, we'll invite the audience at this point to go ahead and type in your questions into the question box or the chat box, and we'll take a moment to look at those. You'll see those interactive dialog boxes there off to the right side of your screen that you can enter those questions into. So we'll give the audience just a moment to enter those questions. While they're doing that, Ryan, I thought I'd ask you a question regarding the Salesforce integration. Since Salesforce is constantly changing, there's currently Salesforce 13, could you describe for us how it is that Magic keeps up with the changes that are taking place in Salesforce?
Oh, certainly. So, right, whenever a version of Magic is released, they typically will be using the newer version of Salesforce. And you'll see up in here in my resource, I have a connection to Salesforce, and it's got my username and my password. But one of the parameters here is also the endpoint URL that you can connect to, and basically that's the version of the UI that's out there. Salesforce releases a new version very often. Every couple of months there's a new one out, maybe every 6 months or less. And you can simply you can see that we're typically compatible with the very new one. I think they're up to like 25 or 26 now, and this version is looking at 23. But you can actually very simply change it to the newer one. If you need to take advantage of a newer feature, you can change it, and then basically find out whether or not your version of Magic is going to be compatible by just trying to do queries and use it. Now, if it's not, you don't need to rewrite your project in order to use the new version. If you needed to say take advantage of a new object or new metadata that was available, all of that's built into the component itself. So, for instance, if you needed to use Salesforce version 23 like we have here, and you had an older version of Magic when it was called iBolt, in order to use the new version of Salesforce, all you would need to do is update your installation of Magic. Go on our Magic download site, download the new version, install it, and bring your project in. And you'll automatically get the new component in your project that will be compatible with the new version of Salesforce. You won't have to go in and change your mappings. You won't have to change the design of your project at all, unless, of course, you want to take advantage of a new feature or something. If you needed to grab a new field, you could just simply go in and do that really quickly. We basically prevent you from getting to a situation where you don't want to upgrade anything because you don't want to make it work for your version. All of the versioning is sort of done behind the scenes, under the hood, built into the component, and it actually makes it a much easier way to work with it.
Okay, if you wanted to bring in a SharePoint web part to a Magic XPA application, is that possible?
You certainly could as a browser control. Magic XPA could show, basically as a form or part of a form, just a browser control, which would basically render it in HTML. So yeah.
Are the data maps pre-mapped, or is this done by the business analyst?
Right. So all of your data mappings can be mapped very simply by the DA or by the Magic XPI developer. We don't really have any templates because basically everybody's environment is so unique. Any template we wrote, you would immediately throw away. We do have tons of examples out there. You can find some examples come installed with the tool. There's examples on TechNet. You can open a service ticket and ask for an example if you need. So those can certainly be of use if you need to see how it's done. But your own mappings are custom, and typically you wouldn't want to use somebody else's.
Okay, very good. I think that completes all the questions that we have. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Ryan, for your presentation as well. And we look forward to seeing you all on the next Magic Software webinar. As we continue here in Webinar Week, we have a webinar at 11 o'clock on Magic XPI Integration Platform for SharePoint and JD Edwards, specifically for those of you who are utilizing the JD Edwards platform.